And I was in the basement.
She was in the basement. There was nobody there. I was thinking...
Just in the basement, not in the bag?
No, she wasn't in the bag, so I go in...
I was preparing, it was before the opening.
There was, like a few nails on a stand and an apple on a stand, cosmic, and just these strange-looking objects, just look like found objects that have been painted white with little messages written on them. John Dunbar sort of showing me around, I'm looking, thinking, what? How much is that, £100 for a bag of nails, are you kidding? How much is the apple? £200?
Fresh apple.
Oh, fresh, thanks a lot.
Right.
£200 for a fresh apple? I thought, this is a con. What the hell is this, I go downstairs and there's a few there must have been assistants, but I thought there was a minimal audience lying around on the floor. Anyway, but Dunbar's trying to hustle a bit because he thinks the millionaire Beatles coming to buy, So he introduces me to this strange-looking Japanese woman. Nothing's happening in the bags. I'm expecting an orgy. In a bag, something's going to be happening in a bag, psychedelic. And it's all quiet. And he introduces me to her. And I said, well, where's the sort of happening, the event? And she gives me a little card. And it just says, breathe on it. So I said, you mean like that? She says, yeah, that's it. So I'm looking for action, and I see this thing called hammer and nail in. It's a board with a chain and a hammer hanging on it and a bunch of nails at the bottom. I said, well, can I hammer a nail in? She says, no. So John Dunbar whisks her away. I said,
because it was before the opening, I didn't want anybody to touch anything.
Right.
So he takes her in the corner and says, that's a millionaire. Well, you know who that is? She didn't know who I was.
He didn't explain anything,
well,
really. He was just sort of trying to hint, with his eyes.
Or whatever. She came over and said, you can hammer one in for 5 shillings. I said, I'll give you an imaginary 5 shillings and how about an imaginary nail in, all right? And that's when we fell. Da-da-da-da-da.
It was as easy as that,
wasn't it? But it took a long time before we're both very shy. So the next time we met was a Klaus Oldenburg opening with a lot of soft, objects like cheeseburgers made out of rubber and garbage like that. And we met again then and sort of made eye contact. But it was 18 months, 2 years before we really got together.
Do you remember what sort of frame of mind you were in those days, John? Were you a happy man musically? Were you satisfied with life?
What year was it? 66?
66.
Well, you'd have to tell me what the Beatles had out then, and I'll tell you what mood I was in, because I only remember things by what tracks were out.
It's just that going on record, you'd said at that time, after you'd done, I think I'm right in saying, the film How I Won the War, you've said in the press recently that at that stage you actually genuinely wanted out from the Beatles. The pressure was all too much.
Well, it wasn't so much the pressure, it was the boredom, After the Beatles' last tour, which was 65, I think, was the one where the Ku Klux Klan were burning Beatle records and I was held up as a Satanist or something. Then we decided no more touring, that's enough of that. I'm not going to put up with it. And I was dead nervous, so I said yes to Dick Lester, that I would make this movie with him. I went to Almeria, Spain for 6 weeks, because I didn't know what to do. What do you do when you don't tour? There's no life. Because I've been on the road.
And that meant a lot to you, didn't it?
Well, it wasn't that I wanted to tour so much, but I didn't know what to do. What the hell do you do all day, I mean, so I did the movie, which was boring as hell, and 6 weeks there. But I was really too scared to walk away. I was thinking, well, this is like the end, really. There's no more touring. That means there's going to be a blank space in the future at some time or other. That's when I really started considering, what can one do? Considering the life without the Beatles, what would it be? And I spent that 6 weeks thinking about that. What am I going to do? Am I going to be doing Vegas? I call it now, but cabaret. I mean, where do you go? So that's when I started thinking about it, but I could not think what it would be or how I could do it, or I didn't consider forming my own group or anything because it didn't even enter my mind. Just what would I do when it stopped?
But at some stage, you obviously did consider that the two of you would make music together. Did that happen quickly?
Well, yes, as soon as we got into Two Virgins, I was interested.
And this is going back to 1968, of course.
But that
the first time
happened. Two Virgins.
Yeah, Two Virgins happened by accident, but still, once I realized somebody else was as kind of balmy as me, liked the sort of freaky sounds and could equally enjoy non-dance music or non-pop music that was, they call it avant-garde, but whatever it is, things to hear in an earphone.
Did you feel it was avant-garde at the time? I mean, we're going back now, 1968, 12 years. Did you see that as being...
Two Virgins?
Being very, very avant-garde?
Well, that's the only word you can use for it, but, I think a label like avant-garde defeats itself let them have avant-garde exhibition. The very fact that avant-garde can have an exhibition defeats the purpose of avant-garde because it's already formalized and ritualized, so it's not avant-garde. But that was the word that was applied to her and her ilk.
Sort of loosely. Mm.
But I didn't think of it anything other than, you know, variations on a theme of sound. History of one of major time. All right, are you ready? As we did before. 1969, in April, the Beatles, of course, had a smash hit back home in the UK with Get Back. What was your sort of frame of mind as far as the Beatles still having hits was concerned when you'd already started on what was to be a very different musical relationship? I wasn't consciously making any decisions. It was all sort of subconscious. And I just made the records with the Beatles like one goes to one's job at 9 in the morning, you know. I mean, Paul or whoever would say it's time to make a record. I'd just go in and make a record, you know, and not think too much about it. Always sort of enjoy the session if it was a good session. You know, if we got our rocks off playing, it was fine. If it was a drag, it was a drag. But it was become a job.
Now, in 1969 also, in April, you did Rape, which was a TV documentary in Vienna.
Well, it was filmed in London for Viennese Austrian TV.
Right, for Austrian TV. How did that come about?
Well, you want me to answer or she should answer? Yeah, you answer. It's your film.
Well, it was just a filmic idea about just following a girl and keep following, just filming her, and what would happen to somebody who's totally exposed all the time, you know.
She was a tourist in London, and she was picked out of the blue. We used to send the cameraman out every day for test shooting in the park, in Hyde Park, and he'd pick somebody, and we'd look at the rushes of different people he'd started following round. And they finally, we selected this girl and said, okay, go back, because he knew which house she'd come out of. And she was Austrian or something.
Beautiful girl, beautiful.
Beautiful girl, claimed to be an actress after the film came out.
Sure she did.
Right. And also we were accused of setting it up that she knew all about it, but she didn't at all.
A newfound career for somebody who'd never dreamt it had happened to.
But talking of bags, what we did was, we went to the famous hotel in Vienna to put it on the TV there. It caused a riot. It was the biggest reaction the Austrian TV had ever had. I mean, there was complaints. There's no sex in it. It was just a constant, you think something's going to happen all the time, but nothing ever really happens. Just the pressure on the girl that she's cracking up under the strain of these strange people following her around. Yeah. But the Austrians never saw us. We were, what's that hotel? The Chocolate Cake Hotel. Yeah. It used to be the Habsburgs' castle or whatever. And we're in there, but they never saw us, the Austrian press. We did everything in a bag. So we came down to the press conference in a bag, in the elevator. And the front page of the Austrian papers was all these people holding mics to a bag, you know, and all they said was, "But John, is that really you?" I said, "Yeah, it's me." "But how do we know?" I said, "Because I'm telling you." They said, "Oh, will you sing a song?" You know, I sang Maggie May and she sang some Japanese folk song or something to them in a bag. And the guy said, "But I've waited years to see. Why did you have to pick Austria to go in a bag?" I said, "Because we wanted to, you know."